Welcome to the Reston Association's 2019 Board of Directors Candidates Forum. I am Ed Abbott, Chairman of the Reston Association Elections Committee and one of the moderators for this evening's forum. Thank you all for attending tonight, and thank you to those who are watching online. This month, the citizens of Reston will elect 5 Reston Association board members, 1 at-large director for a 3-year term, a Hunters Woods Dogwood District Director for a term of 1 year, a North Point District Director for a term of 3 years, a Lake Ann Tall Oaks District Director for a term of 3 years, and an Apartment Owners Director for a term of 1 year. The RA members determine the association's goals, policies, and policies, making an important and lasting contribution to the community. Especially now, as Reston is entering a challenging phase of significant growth and change, the RA Board is positioned to make a lasting impact on the future of Reston. In order to have an election, there must be a vote of the members. Based on the methodology set forth in the association's governing documents, voting by the members must be done by referendum. As such, whether running contested or uncontested annually, the association's members have the right and sole responsibility for electing the directors of the board. I mention this as it is important that you, the members, participate in the election by casting your vote, either online or by mail. A quorum of 10% must be achieved for each of these 3 races to be valid. This evening, we'll have the opportunity to learn about each of the candidates' positions on various issues of importance to our community. There are several ways to ask the candidates about the issues that matter most to you. On your seat, you were provided with a form to pose a written question to the candidates. Members of the Elections Committee and the staff will be collecting those questions from the audience throughout the evening and grouping them by theme. We will also be taking live questions from the audience. Please raise your hand. A committee member will provide you with a microphone. Let's begin with opening remarks. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to make an opening remark. Tom?
Hi, my name is Tom O'Caron. I've lived in Reston for 28 years. I've been active in my local HOA for that period. And this year I decided it was time to step up and give back to the community if I could. The at-large seat was available, so I decided, well, I can give 3 years of my time to the community that I love so much. I have to say in the last 3 weeks, I've studied a lot about Reston in the 28 years that I did not. So I'm learning quite a bit of what's going on, having known it but not really paid attention to it. So I hope that I can use that approach with a lot of people that I know, because I've spoken to people just to let them know, hey, we're running unopposed, but at the same time, we do need you to vote this year. And ask people, hey, how often do you vote? Those type of questions. And I do get a lot of blank stares. So trying to raise awareness, and I look forward to hopefully getting the opportunity to work for the community.
Karen?
Hi, my name's Karen Anton. I was appointed last May to be the Hunters Woods Dogwood District Director, filling the vacancy created when Victoria White moved out of the district and could no longer serve. During that time, as Tom said, you live here for a long time. I've lived here for 30 years in the same house in the Hunters Woods Dogwood District, and but there's a tremendous amount of learning that you do when you become a board member, and questions that you ask, and a lot of listening, and just listening and not talking a whole lot, so you can just be a sponge. So I decided that after doing all that learning, I wanted to be able to apply some of it and continue to serve my community. One of my passions as Hunters Woods Dogwood District Director is to try to raise the profile of that community. It is the most ethnically and economically diverse population that we have in Reston, has some unique problems, and I look forward to continuing to be an advocate for the members of that community. Also, I'm very excited to be able to work with our new CEO, Hank Lynch. I think he will be an outstanding leader and brings a fresh perspective to the community. So please vote. I need your 10%.
Thank you. Aaron?
Hi, I'm Aaron Webb. I live on Hook Road and was involved in the Hook Road Park Working Group, and that kind of got me sucked in and excited about participating in Reston a little bit more. I had a go at running last year, and that was wasn't bruising enough. I thought I'd try it again this year. And it's quite a bit easier the second time, as it turns around. My family and I have lived in Reston for about 12 years. I originally came on a one-year assignment when I was working with the Navy. And we just fell in love with the place. We're in our third house, but the kids have stayed in the same schools, but we had to keep changing sizes of houses. And the most recent move was because we didn't need more house, we needed more driveway because they started to be teenagers and had cars. And I didn't want to, have all the cars in the street plugging up and ruining the neighbors' lives. But anyway, I'm looking forward to serving on the board and helping give back to Reston and preserve what a gem of a place it is, and preserve that for the future generations. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Mooney, and I'm running for the North Point District seat. I've served there 2 years, filling the last 2 years of my predecessor's tenure. And I'm running again because I really feel we are at a transition point here in Reston. A transition with Hank Lynch, who I think we hired someone who can look at Reston with fresh eyes and lead us to the future. And I believe we've found a very good man, and I wanted to be part of that transition. We're continuing the transition of in our relationship with the county vis-a-vis land use planning and zoning as we struggle through the last stages of the first part of the PRC ordinance, because even if the Board of Supervisors agrees with the Planning Commission and does not pass the proposed ordinance, that will leave an enormous amount of work in recoupling planning and zoning and coming up with a proper plan, both plan amendments and PRC ordinance amendments. I think we're in a transition too because this coming year is going to be, this year, not this coming year, is going to be an important budget year. We have the first year of our biennial budget, but we also have our 2019 reserve study, which is extraordinarily important. And there are many of us who've spoken, we would like this to be more than just a financial exercise or even just a physical asset exercise, but try to understand how physical assets support the programs which support the needs and interests of our members, how to do that. And that ties in with the goal that Hank has. He would like to do a database or an evidence-based real survey of the community. I mean, a real survey, because we hear complaints, we hear interests from this group or that group, but as we try to struggle to do the best we can with limited resources, we need to know truly what does the community as a whole want. So, so I bring 27 years of local government management experience. I bring a great love of Reston. My dear wife Susan and I met as widowed folks, and when she agreed to move here, she kept, after we looked all around, she said, "I got to live in Reston." So it's just, such a wonderful community. So I hope that I can win your vote, and I hope that you will vote for all of our candidates so that we have a successful election this year. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, John. Okay, now the Elections Committee has, I guess looks like it's about 20 minutes to ask questions. So here we go. I guess we'll start with Tom. How should RA manage its resources to best meet the needs of its members? You have 1 minute.
Okay. Well, I think as John just said, with the reserve study, and we need to look at really what are the assets that we do have in Reston, and look at that and do an analysis to determine what can we do to make sure that, I lost my train of thought, I apologize.
It's okay, it happens to me all the time.
In terms of I lost my thought, and I'm gonna stick with that, I apologize.
Okay, no need to apologize. Karen?
I would just like to say that it's important that we get information from the membership in order to help us better manage our resources, to know what kinds of things do they use? What kinds of things don't we have that they would like us to have? Our facilities have been here for a long time, and yes, we do a reserve study, and it'd be really interesting to see what that shows up, but I think it's really important to get the input from the members to help us manage the resources and integrate that into our whole budgeting process.
Aaron?
So I think, like it's been said, the most important thing for managing our resources is to have accurate data to make those decisions on, to be able to see through some of the fog of zealousness. Is that a good word? And see, I think there's a large percentage of Reston that is very happy with what we've got, and we need to make sure that we don't knock them off kilter. But they're not really motivated to show up at these meetings and wave flags and tell us that we're doing a good job. So I think it's important for the board to find ways to uncover that data, and so we can manage the resources from a holistic view. Thanks.
John?
I agree with everything that's been said thus far. And I again, the reserve study is just going to be absolutely critical to get it right this time. And as I've already said, many of us on the board believe that we should tie the maintenance of physical resources, physical assets, with the needs and interests of our members. So those physical assets are one level. I think we need to carefully steward our financial assets too. And we've had some vigorous budget debates over the last couple of years. And I think what's clear is we want to achieve the best value for our members, which is value is the ratio over benefits obtained over the costs expended to obtain those benefits. And we have to make sure that those costs are affordable. So we have to make sure that the benefits are really priority benefits, that we don't chase every possible interest we might
Your 1
have.
minute is up.
Pardon me?
Your 1 minute is up.
Okay. Okay, thank
You
you.
have a minute. You use it.
So that we really prudently focus on priority benefits for our members. And Hank's study, if approved by the board, will help us determine that. But we also have to make sure that the costs are affordable, financially sustainable long-term, both for Reston Association as a corporation, but also for individual members, because we have members from all different economic levels, and we have to be very sensitive to that too. So getting that balance equation, that value equation right is a tricky thing, but I think there's a strong will to do that on the part of the board.
Thank you. Let's see. We'll start with John this time. What improvements, if any, do you believe should be undertaken to improve the board's oversight of the association?
The board, I didn't catch that
What
last.
improvements, if any, do you believe should be undertaken to improve the board's oversight of the association?
Oversight?
Yeah. Your minute starts when you start to talk.
Okay. I would say one of the most important thing that the board needs to help improve is the experience of the covenants enforcement. There is no issue that we more consistently heard when we did our 4 listening sessions this past year than covenant enforcement. And we heard both sides. We heard people insist that we enforce the covenants. That's one of the things that they treasure about Reston, that we don't let people let their properties go to hell. You know, that we maintain both common properties and privately owned properties well. So enforcement of covenants is important. On the other hand, there were folks who spoke equally passionately about the need to be more, have more rational, have more efficient processes for covenant enforcement. And secondly, to have guidelines that that made sense. In other words, if a building was built, 40 years ago, the same materials may not be ready now. So we need flexible guidelines.
Okay, that's it. Your time's up.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. The board's actions are I'm sorry. We're going to Aaron. I lost my train of thought.
It happened.
It's going around.
Can you repeat that question, though?
Yeah, hang on a second. She's got me watch. What improvements, if any, do you believe should be undertaken to improve the board's oversight of the association?
So I really don't have a lot of experience, detailed experience with how the board operates now. So I really can't answer that question, but I'm looking forward to learning and observing and kind of making note of, hey, where can we improve and become more efficient and do a better job. So as a freshman on the board, I think that's going to be one of my primary responsibilities is new eyes.
Good point. Karen?
Well, it's an interesting question for right now. I'm currently a member of the Board Governance Committee, and one of the things that committee and the entire board are looking at right now is a resolution dealing with the board operations in relation to staff and determining if we are a managing board or a governing board. There have been some lively discussions about this, and we are going to be meeting to look into this even further. So I really don't have a whole lot to say about this right now, except I will say, stay tuned.
Okay. Tom?
I would say it's an interesting question, and I hate to pull the line that Aaron had just said, which is being a freshman and not really understanding what the board is doing, what improvements can be done, what oversight is there. I'm planning to sit here and listen and learn as we go along.
Fair enough. Okay. Let's start with Tom. The board's actions are limited by the governing documents. What process will you use to assure those actions don't reach beyond the board's legal limits?
I guess getting a better understanding of those documents would be the most important part of my part. Speaking with counsel to understand really where we stand, how he views it, Tony views it, would be important. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Karen?
Could you repeat the question, Ed, please?
The board's actions are limited by the governing documents. What process will you use to assure those actions don't reach beyond the board's legal limits?
Work with our wonderful general counsel, Tony Champ, who keeps us legal and keeps us honest, and again, just being very familiar with what our governing documents say and making sure we stick to those. They're quite specific.
Aaron?
Pretty much the same answer. I've always been a rule follower, and I actually read the governing documents when we first moved here, and they gave me that big old packet. It was kind of fun to do. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but it's like everybody said, we've got counsel for a reason, and the guidelines are there to keep us on the rails. I don't think it'll be hard to do.
John?
I'm going to go back to something that Karen said earlier. Finishing Resolution 5, which is what the operations resolution she was referring to, is very important because it defines the authority alignments between the board and individual members of the board, the CEO, the attorney, the chief financial officer, and the rest of staff. And it's very important that we all agree on what the proper balance is in that alignment of checks and balances. Secondly, we need to finish something that we've also worked on a long time, which is the conflict of interest statement. The previous one had many problems with it, and we've been struggling with that, although now Resolution 5 has taken precedence. And if we have time and energy, like to continue working on the code of ethics that we began 2 years ago.
Okay. My watch is not behaving. Let's start with you, John. This is one right up your alley. What do you consider are the most important? What do you consider are the most important character qualities required of a board member?
This may sound silly, but I would say the first and most important quality, above all, is devotion to Reston. Where there's enough love of Reston that personal interests, personal piques against this person or that person all fall by the wayside following the interests of Reston because we're devoted to it, because we love it and treasure it. And that may seem very broad, but I think that devotion is key. Other things, it takes hard work. You really have to do a lot of homework to do your job as a board member well. You have to be willing to ask questions and to study, because when we come to the board meeting, we're supposed to be a deliberative body, but if we haven't deliberated personally, our deliberation as a board will not be worth as much. And finally, I think civility. And civility is not some sort of weak-wristed politeness or refusal to disagree, but it's respect for the other person, listening to his or her opinions, and willing to state my position and then try to seek common ground.
Aaron?
Yeah, I think altruism is how I would say the same as devotion, like John said. you have to be able to set aside any personal needs or things specific to your situation and have empathy for the other situations that Reston residents have, and then make decisions that are in the best interest of the whole, even if it's personally not in your best interest. That is a hard commodity to come by in this day and age. It's definitely something that I aspire to, and I'm willing to be called out if I'm not living up to that. And that would be a key characteristic to look for in a board member.
Karen?
Patience. Open-mindedness, eagerness, and a willingness to learn. I ditto strongly John's civility and common sense. I think sometimes we get bogged down in little, I don't know, nitty things, and sometimes we have trouble seeing the forest for the trees. And I think a lot of what we do is, when you think about it, is just common sense.
Honesty, being able to put yourself out there and listen to people, be willing to ask questions. A team player, this organization needs people to get together and be part of a team. Open-mindedness, just being able to listen to everybody else in the room, hear what they're saying, and accepting that, and politeness, or whatever word you prefer to use. We're all here as part of a community, and we should be able to appreciate other people's opinions and still have our own opinion.
Okay, I think we've got time for a couple more. Fairfax County is proposing to increase the population density in and around Reston. The proposal is complicated. However, how would you approach evaluating the proposal? If you have evaluated it, what is your conclusion and why? Tom?
I guess, having looked at the material for the last 3 weeks in earnest and really kind of breaking it down, it looks like we're at 13, the density, and they want to move it up to 16. It doesn't seem as if the supports is there from the county to back up the infrastructure. Our area, between 3 and 7 o'clock, you just can't drive anywhere. So we really need to be able to have the backing of Fairfax County to realize if we're going to increase the numbers, we need to be able to have some type of infrastructure to support that.
Karen?
We have a lot of really smart people in Reston who are doing a very good job evaluating the material, and I defer to their hard work and smarts, when it comes to thinking about this. This development is going to happen. We just have to make sure that what the county wants to do is supported by real accurate numbers. And so far, they have not proven that to us. That's about all I'll say. I was stuck on Wheelie this morning for quite a while. I had to leave my house earlier than I normally do, and once again, I'm reminded, boy, this is getting bad. So again, I want to shout out here to Larry Butler, whose presentation before the Planning Commission I thought really nailed what the issues are. It's like, come to us with real numbers before you take any action on this. Otherwise, we just can't support this. So we'll see. I think they heard that.
Aaron?
So I'm looking forward to learning more and digging a little bit deeper to understand this. So far, everything seems to be very superficial, back and forth, and I haven't heard, like you said, a real numbers or even a real vision, a real story. Reston was founded on the 7 goals that kind of outlined this is the way we want to go. And it was founded as something intentionally different from everything else that was going on. And I think we want to keep Reston intentionally different than everything else that's going on. But that doesn't mean in the past. We can be future focused, but I think it'll take a lot of creativity to get these things to balance correctly so that we still have Reston that's true to the original outlined goals of having all the amenities at the same time as all of the people, which looks like is out of whack right now, having a nice diversity of housing options in the same neighborhood, which also I'm not seeing too much of, and then focusing on the oh shucks, I can't. Bob Simon's words were better than I can remember. The individual and enshrining the individual and honoring. Honor is the wrong word. Somebody can look it up and know what I'm trying to say. But I'll memorize those for the first board meeting, and then I'll be better.
It's been my privilege and sometimes my frustration to be very involved in this over the last 2 years. But I and I think all of us in RA and in Coalition for a Plan Reston support the recommendation recently made by the Planning Commission to, first of all, reject the proposed density cap increase, and then to urge that the Board of Supervisors create a new and well-balanced community process to re-examine both the Reston Master Plan and the PRC zoning ordinance in tandem. Without getting into the complexities of it, this unique creature we have called planned residential community, which was very rare when it was begun in 1962, utterly depends on the coordination and the attunement between planning and zoning. And without getting into the history of it, we believe that that was ruptured even during the process of the comprehensive plan, which in many ways is a wonderful plan, but it had some serious flaws because of a serious process flaw, I believe. So, but we need to bring that back together. So I hope the Board of Supervisors will adopt the recommendation of the Planning Commission, but then the real work begins. Because we know that there is such a thing as bad destructive development. But we also know that without good development and redevelopment, Reston could become a ghost town, you know? So it's trying to find that balance, and the work after the Board of Supervisors' decision will be more arduous than what happened before it.
Okay, well, that concludes the Elections Committee's questions. And now we'll take questions from the audience, but Mr. Butler is going to relieve me.
I'll give you a little break.
In the Navy, as they say, I stand relieved.
Good job. Good evening. I'm Larry Butler, Senior Director for Land Use and Planning here at Reston Association, and I'm going to pose questions from our audience here. Shalise has picked up cards. Hopefully there are some questions on the cards. Okay. So what we're going to do, these questions need to be relevant for the candidates, for all candidates. And I'm going to read those cards so everybody gets to hear those, and then we'll go through the candidates to answer those. Hopefully they are in the form of a question and not a statement. And hopefully none of those constitute a personal attack on our candidates who have graciously given their time to run for the board. So I will start. And depending on how many we have here, we may actually go over our time a little bit. Okay. All right, so that's a question. All right. First question, and the candidates will have a minute to answer these questions. So Looks like we've got about 6 or so let's be crisp with our answers if possible. All right, the theme here, RA's mission. The question is, what do you consider RA's primary role and mission to its members and its community? That's the first part. And the second part, how does RA relate to small tax district Reston and the roles of each? Everybody get that? Or I
Second
can
part,
read it
can you
again?
read that again? Sorry.
The second part, how does RA relate to small tax district Reston, small tax district number 5, and the roles of each? And I will start with Tom. I'll do that next. I got 6 of them. I can mix it up. I just got to remember the order, right?
So the first question was RA's mission,
Primary role and mission to its members in the community.
to maintain RA services, to maintain the park's open space, and to provide the environment that we currently have, which is one of the best places to live in Northern Virginia. In terms of the taxation, I'm not sure.
The small tax district, which is essentially the tax district that funds the Reston Community Center.
I'm not really sure how to address that question. I would say in terms of if that's related to the fees for Reston, fees have been maintained for the 28 years I've lived here. They've been consistently about the same. So I think they're doing a fantastic job in that regard.
Okay. Karen?
Yeah, again, ditto about the mission to protect our covenants, our amenities, to make sure that the membership has what they're supposed to have, basically. As far as Small Tax District 5, I admit I need to learn more about that. But there are issues that come to my mind with our relationship with RCC, which is a long time been a partnership. But we also need to look at things like, are we duplicating efforts anywhere? And that's really all I have to say about that right now before I learn more about it.
Okay. Aaron?
I don't have much more to add than our mission is to provide stewardship over the resources. And it's been spoken of quite well in other questions. And the small tax district number 5 is an identified hole in my understanding that I will fill.
I agree with what my colleagues have said. So it's our mission, our primary duty is to maintain our resources, natural and resources, buildings, to provide services, priority services, I would say, not any possible service, but priority service to our members. And it is to enforce the covenants to make sure that all common and all private resources are maintained in compliance with the requirements of the covenants that we make when we join Reston. Reston is not just another subdivision or suburb. It is a community, a covenanted community. And I think we have to make that not just something that people are aware of, but that people treasure, that we are a covenanted community.
All right, thank you, John. We're going to start with Karen on this one. See, I'm mixing it up a little bit. The theme here is your strengths/background. What will you bring from your background that makes you uniquely able to contribute and help RA perform and be responsive?
Just read Reston Now. That's my easy answer. No, I will talk about that as I did in my statement that appeared on Reston Now today. I have a varied background. I have kind of a right brain, left brain approach to things. I have a financial background and also at the same time a performing arts background. So I think that affords me the opportunity to look at things from different sides, and I don't come to conclusions quickly. And I think that's an asset when it comes to dealing with board issues. I'm a people person. I really enjoy engaging with people. I very much enjoy grassroots level engagement with people to ascertain what their needs and expectations are. Did I answer that? Can you?
You did, but you're out of time.
Were there other aspects? I'm out of time.
You're out of
anyway.
time.
I
Remember,
didn't,
we're
but I'm
looking
out of
for
time,
crisp-
or I
We
did,
got
but
a
I'm
bunch
out
of questions, so we got to be really
of time. I
crisp.
hope I did answer.
All right. Aaron.
All right. My background, I grew up in the West, where it's blue and brown, as opposed to green and gray. That's what they always told me. And then Reston, we could get the blue and the green together. That's why I'm staying here. So, but I'm a scientist by education and an auto mechanic by addiction. And I've got kind of a broad spectrum in my work pursuits. I've managed large budgets and projects and hit deadlines and those sorts of things. So I think I have some of the experiences that are useful to helping organize and serve on the board. And I've lived in towns as small as 106 people, and then went to high school in downtown Los Angeles. And I think I've seen the spectrum, and I know that Reston is an amazing place, and some of the things that make it stand out to me are what I'm anxious to protect. Thanks.
As I mentioned before, I did 27 years of local government management, so I done a lot of management issues, budget issues, and many of the specialty services of government, like Parks and Rec, transportation stuff also apply to Reston. I am as some know, I have a degree in philosophy with a specialization in ethics. So I'm very interested in ethical issues and governance issues from that perspective too. And finally, I would say that if I look for a common thread through all of the various careers I've had, and I've had some very different ones, the common thread is I've always sought work that focused on fostering community. I really believe in the importance of community in human life. So I bring that.
Tom.
My background is that I've grown up around the world. My dad was in the military, so I was born in Hawaii, lived in California, lived overseas. So I come from a perspective of realizing that we're not all the same. We're all completely different, and that's the great thing. Reston really provides that. We have a great community here. In terms of work, I've been in sales, real estate, and tax preparation for the last 20-plus years. Biggest thing that I've learned is it's great to talk about yourself, do different things, but it's really listening to what other people have to say, taking that from every person in the room, and tweaking whatever you're trying to get across the line. So what I can provide is I'm happy to do all the homework. I'm happy to do all the work behind the scenes. I don't really enjoy sitting here talking, but at the same time, I'm willing to listen to whatever has to be said and get that objective taken care of.
Thank you. All right, our next question. The theme is RA scope. The question, should RA cede ownership and/or management of its rec facilities to Fairfax Parks? We will start, let's see, with Aaron, I think is where I'm going now.
All right. I don't know. That's a new proposal to me. There's a lot of research to be done to try and see what are the pluses and minuses of changing control over. My knee-jerk reaction is, well, I'm not sure. I wouldn't think so, but that's yeah, it would take a lot of research and understanding and delving and a lot of data to be able to even speak intelligently to whether we should hand over the rec facilities to some other management group. I hope that's the kind of thing that the board is planning on doing, is really delving into the issues like that come up and finding what is the answer that's in the best interest and the best long-term interest of Reston.
John?
I would vote no on this issue strenuously. It would be like taking the violin line out of a symphony. The conductor takes the line out of the symphony and loans it to someone else to manage while he does the brass and the piano and the timpani. The genius of Reston is that it is a harmony of land uses. And we must control our open spaces because we know what the harmony is, and we need to maintain that harmony.
That's good. I don't know the background on this, and I don't really know what Fairfax could provide that we can't. I would say, kind of voicing what John just said, if we're currently running the program ourselves, and unless there's a really dramatic issue, why would we get Fairfax involved when a lot of their parks/facilities, they have problems with themselves?
Karen?
Yeah, I have to say, I'm with you. I haven't really been aware that this is something that is maybe being considered. I don't know, but I would vote no on it also for exactly the reasons that John just enumerated.
Okay. The next one, the theme is asset assessment results. So bear
Could you
with me.
repeat that, Larry?
The theme, asset assessment results. Not sure that's a term. They can take those words individually. That's how I read it. So let me read this. If RA has quote unquote assets, things we now own that are not benefiting versus the continued cost of maintenance, not sure, high cost benefit ratio, will it guide whether to rid ourselves of these anchors? That's how it's written, so I'll start with you, John.
I think it's a very good question. And if we don't approach every budget, both operating and capital budget, so both services and physical assets, with the ability to look with clear eyes to see whether this is still of value to the organization and its members, and to be ready to drop a service, or perhaps even sell an asset if it truly is no longer a benefit to the harmonious vision of Reston. I think we always have to be open to that. But we should be slow to do so, looking at solely a short-term period of time. We need to look long-term. It may not seem valuable now, but in the long term, is it valuable? So I think, yes, readiness to divest ourselves of things that do not present value to the association and its members, but insist on doing a careful, long-term look at it to make sure that we're not too short-sighted.
I'm not really sure how to address this other than use an example, Thoreau Pool, I know is an issue, and in terms of dollar value, there's lots of pros and cons with that. I would say, though, that if we start taking different assets or different features that we provide the community and take that away, it's going to hurt. So we should really, anything that's going to be involved with taking away as an asset for the community should really be researched and see what the pluses and minuses of it are.
Karen?
Yeah, I think this sort of relates to the earlier question that we talked about regarding managing resources. And again, I will say again what I said then. I think that in order to make these determinations, we're going to need to gather a tremendous amount of data from the membership and then make our decisions according to that.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, I would echo John's statement about making sure we take the long-term vision in making strategic decisions like that. I mean, if the RA has a closet full of 8-track tape players that we are maintaining at a high cost, that would be an easy decision to let that go, because in the future, we aren't going to need those. But and that's just a silly example. But most things, we want to make sure that we aren't making rash decisions, because we're the benefits of decisions that people made 50 years ago with a long-term view. We want to make sure that we can provide that to others as well.
I feel kind of bad because my wife and I went through our VHSs last weekend.
Right.
Wow. I feel horrible. Our son's childhood favorite, that we kept that one. So, here's a nice short question. I like these. Theme, communication with membership. How would you stimulate more active communication with the Reston membership? I think we're back to Tom starting, Karen starting.
This has been talked about a lot, but I think we really need to make more of an effort to get out there and meet with the clusters. What I keep hearing is clusters just don't feel like they're being heard. And blah, blah, blah. I'm being really inarticulate here. But anyway, I think that's, we need to make more of an effort to do that. I think we need to use social media more to communicate with our members. That's about it.
Aaron?
Yeah, I like your idea of reaching out to the clusters and then spending more time with them. The people who are serving on boards of the various clusters are somewhat motivated already, and they know how to go and rouse their neighbors and get their neighbors invested a little bit. So maybe we can just add fuel to a spark that's already there. This is a challenging one, and I don't know if I have any good answers for this, but I'm definitely open to smart people who know how to communicate well. I think the current president was good at communicating, and he looks good on YouTube videos, and I've actually watched some of those. And I hope that we can go forward. We've got some great people on the board already that I think will fill his position well. But I think we keep that up, the digital presence, and try and be more humanistic.
I really agree with Karen and Aaron, and have chosen actually to put this in my little piece in Reston Now. I think clusters are essential. That is the part of Reston that we've not worked well, and I believe many of our covenant issues come from having failed to communicate effectively with clusters whose design guidelines we are required to enforce. And if they don't update them, then we are enforcing out-of-date guidelines. Plus, it's just an obvious way to get to regular members. I agree with the social media thing, which is something that Hank is very intently intent of doing. And I want to see us reach out to people as they come into Reston to help them understand, appreciate, and buy into this idea of covenanted community. This is a crazy idea, spoken publicly for the first time, but I would like us to give to everyone coming to Reston the beautiful film, A Different Way of Living, which speaks of the Reston vision in a very moving way. But I think to get people to fall in love with the vision of Reston upon their arrival would be a very good thing.
I think social media is definitely the way we need to approach try communicating with people. Having been on my cluster board for 10 plus years, because most people don't want to get involved, we really, if you want to reach out to them, we need to go grassroots and really just kind of get as many of the people, coming in here. I think if you can get the people on those boards in here, that's great. If you're trying to reach every cluster member that's out there, unfortunately, most people just don't care. So we need to, from a social media standpoint, I think that's the way you kind of gather people, get their interest, and push their buttons.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to use moderator's discretion. This is a very long question here, and so I'm going to paraphrase it. And I believe the author will accept that, because in my discretion, I think it's a leaning question, so I'm going to dumb it down to the basic fundamentals here. You've already heard talk about the Resolution 5 that's being considered, so the board's currently considering relations between the board and the various high-level employees, principal financial officer, CEO, legal counsel, possible COO. What do you think should be the relation between the principal financial officer and the board and the CEO, and why? And I'll start with you, Aaron.
I don't know. I don't know what they are now. A good relationship? Can I go with that broad? Something functional would be helpful as well. But I look forward to seeing how it operates now and make suggestions if I think they're appropriate.
John?
Because the CEO is the one who is charged by our bylaws with coming up with an annual budget and charged with successfully implementing that budget over the year, and because the CFO is his chief ally in that, I believe the CEO must have day-to-day direction of the CFO. But the CFO plays another function, and that is of financial watchfulness, to make sure we're not making inadvertent mistakes, and certainly to make sure that we don't make that some people don't make deliberate mistakes. And so because of that, he must have ready recourse to the board, and the board must have ready recourse to him. And what we need to do is to have both of those truths formulated in a way which gives clarity, gives good guidance to all involved, doesn't make things so complicated that we just get balled up and are inefficient, but also that we have the proper checks and balances.
Okay. Tom?
I'm going to pull the freshman card and say, I'm not really sure what the current relationship is. It seems like they should be tied together, on the same page. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Karen?
I pretty much agree with John on this issue. Checks and balances is crucial, of course. But I do feel that it is the CEO who does the hiring and firing of the CFO. Yeah, I guess that's about it. They have the day-to-day dealings with each other on the management of the association, and of course, the board will be aware of any important financial decisions and budgetary decisions, which of course would come to the board, so.
Okay. There's a second part to this question, and while we're on that vein of thinking, I think we'll go to you, John. Similarly, do you think the legal counsel should respond directly to the board or through the CEO, and why?
I think the current board is already pretty much in agreement on this, that the board will hire the attorney, general counsel, or if for some reason we don't have a general counsel, if we hire someone. But anyway, that the board would be the hiring entity, but in consultation with the CEO, because the attorney is the attorney of all of Reston Association, with a primary responsibility to the board, but he's responsible for helping the CEO and other staff to do their work too. So I think it should be a hire by the board with consultation with the CEO.
Tom?
I'm going to defer to what John just said, which is, it sounds like having the opportunity to have counsel help the board, show us the ropes, tell us what's going on, is fantastic. The CEO is running the show, so he needs that aspect to do his job properly. Again, I kind of defer just because I'm not really sure how it works currently.
Karen?
Well, if any of you watched our last board meeting, you'll know that I have a differing opinion from John on this one. I would be in favor of the CEO hiring the general counsel in consultation with the board. I feel that it is the board's responsibility to hire the CEO, and everything else should be left to that person.
Aaron?
I'll have to think about this some more. I have two good arguments.
All right, very good. So we are just past our 8 o'clock timeframe. I do have 3 more questions here that were submitted. Now, I'm going to suggest that this first question, which we've touched on a little bit, I'm holding you in a little bit of suspense here. It could be a one-word answer, if you want to keep it crisp, to get to the next 2 questions. So I think we're going back to starting with Tom. Do you favor an increase in the PRC cap for Reston, adding more density?
No.
Crisp answer. Karen?
No, not unless they can give us numbers that make sense, that would justify it. We don't have those yet.
I thought questions were supposed to be open-ended.
Karen made it a little bit open-ended.
I'll pass.
No, because the need has not been demonstrated.
Okay, we go back, so this is the second on the sheet. I'll start with Karen. What are your thoughts on adding more RA members from transit station areas before taking an inventory of existing facilities to determine if RA can handle new members with existing RA amenities and infrastructure?
Well, as some of you know, some of you here know, that I have proposed the notion of an associate membership, which might include those non-members who are residing in the TSAs. So they would pay some kind of a reduced assessment in order to use our facilities and amenities, something lesser than what somebody, say, living in Vienna or Great Falls would do if they wanted to participate in events, classes or events, which of course any non-member can do now, but as somebody living in Reston who is not an RA member, they would get some kind of a reduced rate. So hopefully this is something that the board can look at over the coming months to see if that's something that's feasible. But yeah, it is. I know there's a lot of concern about that, about people, who are not RA members using the pathways and riding bikes on the pathways, and how do we deal with that? I'm not sure.
Aaron?
I think this goes back to some of the foundational goals that drove Reston, where the amenities came along with the people. Some of our amenities that we provide are metered, as it were, like the pools. Others, like the paths, are not metered. And proximity will drive usage, whether you're a member or not. I think this is one of the issues that we need to grapple with. And really, at the risk of sounding like Manifest Destiny talk, it's better if we can convince all these new developments that aren't necessarily within our boundaries to join us, to be part of us. There's that one sliver down at the south end. Does that drive anybody else nuts, or is it just my OCD? Can we talk to them and offer them?
Yeah.
So this is going to be one of our challenges that we have to deal with, and I think we can come up with a creative, a good solution. But we'll have to, if we can put the pressure on to make sure the amenities come, along with the people, we'll be able to stay where we want to be.
John?
So Many in the Reston community speak about one Reston, and I'm one of them. So that there is RA Reston, there's the Dulles Toll Road Corridor, or TSA Reston, but we are one Reston, and I believe that's true. Whether we like it or not, we're strapped to each other. And if one of us dies, the other will be strapped to a rotting corpse. So it's important that we have one Reston fully alive. And it's within that context that I would say, first of all, as Karen said, we have, and Aaron mentioned this too, we have the phenomenon of free riders. So people who are not part of RA, who at least free ride on our paths and so forth like that. So, and there's no way of preventing that. We cannot police that without more cost than is worth the effort. So we can't prevent that. And then we have to distinguish between individual members, and maybe that's what your individuals who become members, and that's maybe the associate membership. And that makes a lot of sense. And in a sense, we already have people who buy pool passes and tennis passes. The trickier question is membership of new developments, where a whole development comes in as a member of Reston. And that can be a beneficial thing. It can increase our assessment revenue. It can also allow us to have some say in the design of the development, at least some parts of the design of the development, so it fits in more harmoniously. But it can be tricky, because if we start taking responsibility for maintenance of a park or a playground there, then we're encumbering ourselves with financial responsibility. So I think integrating whole developments can be a good thing if done very, very carefully, but it has to be very careful.
I think it's a good idea because they're using a majority of our services anyway. A lot of those properties have their own pools, so they may not use our pools, but from a revenue standpoint, if they're using our services, we need to continually keep them updated and replenished. If we can expand that base, it's a good idea.
Okay. So I've got one more. It's actually two questions in this last one here. I'm going to condense this. So to frame it, should RA members be financing both RA and RCC to run programming non-essential to an HOA? And the second half of that, should it also be doing senior programming, camps, school vacation camps, trips, movies, and other programming which do not involve RA amenities, especially if they are not profit-making? I'll start with Aaron on this one.
Okay, I'm going to keep going after the same note. The seventh goal was that Reston needs to be a financial success. It's not a government entity, a government-sponsored thing. It was a financial endeavor, and so it had to succeed financially. And I think that's the lens to drive what sort of programs, amenities that we provide to the members. The Reston Association intentionally took the H out. It's not just a homeowners association. It's an association for Reston residents as well as Reston homeowners. If you happen to be both, you get 2 votes. That's fun. But I think our scope can go as wide as it needs to be, as long as it makes sense financially, and we can show that we aren't becoming a money-losing scenario. And I think that should drive what programs we keep and what programs we phase out.
John?
I think it's concerning Reston Community Center. I think there are two important things. One is, first of all, I want to absolutely endorse what Aaron just said, that we have to be remain long-term financially viable and sustainable in our services. So we cannot overpromise what we cannot long-term continue to deliver. I think it's important that we insist in a polite but very firm way that Reston get the right mix of services from the county, because I'm not sure we've always been as assertive as we might have been, but I don't know that for sure. But I think that's one part of it. Secondly, I think we should avoid overlaps, if they exist, between services. We shouldn't duplicate services that Reston Community Center can deliver as well or better than we can. And thirdly, again, I think we cannot deliver every service which occurs to us as a good service. It has to be a priority good service.
Financially, if we're exceedingly expensive for these services, that's one issue. Otherwise, I would say that these services for a segment of Restonians are very important, and providing that is something that we should continue to do. Of course, we need to study that and see how much is that actually costing us. If Fairfax County is able to shoulder any of that because we're providing the benefits that they could also provide, then we should review that. But otherwise, I'll get back to, I think Reston provides so many different services to everybody that lives here, and each little group is important for them. So we don't want to eliminate things unless, for whatever reason, financially, we can't afford it.
Karen?
I think for those services that are not generating a profit, we have to look at why not. And just because they're not generating a profit, does that mean we eliminate them? I mean, are they not generating a profit because we are overlapping with the county or with RCC? But go back to what's been mentioned several times tonight. I think as far as providing services to our membership, we need to hear from them what it is that they want, what it is that we offer that they're really not interested in, and why. So I think it's get the information from the membership.
Okay. So we are over time now. I didn't realize there was 2 additional sheets of these. I'm not sure these were from, but we still need to do closing statements. And then, but let me ask, are there any burning questions? Y'all can fight over them, who gets their hand up and gets chosen or whatever, from the audience before we go to the candidates' closing statements. We have a microphone so that it gets on the tape.
Hi, my name is Erwin Flashman. Each of you has presented yourselves as a candidate for the board, and there must be some driving reason as to why you're doing it, beyond that you want to give back to the community. Do you have something that you want to accomplish? What is it and why? And why should the board address it?
And why should what?
Why should the board address what you think should be done?
We'll start with John.
Will you allow me to say 4? So
Keep it crisp.
see this PCR thing through. Secondly, really start to make the covenant system work well. Thirdly, really do a good job on this, especially the reserve study, but also this budget. And fourthly, get our basic governance documents in set up and working. And I think the reasons for that are, I think I've said why I think those are important and why the board should focus on them in the course of my other comments.
Tom?
So the question is, why do we want to be a part of the board and volunteer for Reston? And I would say that I use all the amenities. I use the woods, I use the paths, I use the lakes. And I want to have a voice in that so that they continue the way we planned in the past. I haven't swam in the lake that I live on for the last 3 years because we dump chemicals in there every year because the boats don't work unless we do that. I'd love to have a voice to be able to make some changes in that. I walk the woods all the time with my dog. I look around and see all the trees that are going down and worry, we had a really wet year this year. What happens when we don't? Are we going to have some serious fires that are going on? If I can share my opinion and my voice and make some changes, I'd love to do that.
Karen?
I've said this several times before. I said it when I first applied for the position last May. One of my passions as a 30-year resident of Hunters Woods Dogwood is to raise the profile of that district. Now, some of that doesn't involve RA. For example, look at Hunters Woods Village Center as compared to North Point, for example. I mean, there's different levels there, but it's not RA property. But to give this culturally diverse and economically diverse population more of a voice, I'm going to continue to do that via the Hunters Woods Neighborhood Coalition and various interactions with the local law enforcement and visiting the residents of the apartment buildings in the district. I think that this district has been underrepresented, and that's a prime motivating factor for me wanting to be on the board, in addition to addressing some of the other things that I've mentioned and John just mentioned tonight.
And Aaron?
I really don't have a particular issue that, motivated me to try and run for the board. Like I said, as a scientist, I studied things, and I know that the nature of the universe is entropy, and without effort, things will just kind of go to chaos. So effort's required. As we moved from our second house in Reston to our third house in Reston, we moved out of a cluster, so I can't run for that board. So this is the one.
All righty. Well, we're going to go to the candidates' closing statements now, and you have 1 minute. Again, crisp. And because we started with John last time, we're going right back to the end of the table here, and we'll start with Tom.
I hope I get the opportunity to serve my community. I hope I get the opportunity to show the people of Reston what they've shown me for the time that I lived here, which is I've always felt welcome. I've always felt that my community is a beautiful place to live and well taken care of. If given the opportunity, that's what I will do.
We need to hear from more of the membership. We see pretty much the same people at all the meetings. We hear the same voices. There's a lot more people out there. Now, are we not hearing from them because they're perfectly happy and satisfied? Or are we not hearing from them because they feel nobody's listening? So I think that that's something that we really have to work harder at as we go forward. So we're all unopposed, but we need your vote, so please vote March 4th through April 1st. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to working with all of these great people, people who are passionate about Reston and a little bit crazy because they're willing to dedicate so much time. And I'm looking forward to all that I can learn from that. I want to echo Karen's statement. We need everybody to vote, and we need all of you to get all of your neighbors to vote too. So when we get halfway through March, we might have to make greater appeals to actually do some door knocking. But I appreciate the opportunity that Reston's afforded me and my family, and I look forward to 3 years if I'm elected to the board of service.
I echo my colleagues here in their appeal for everyone to please get out and vote. But beyond that, I would ask people to use this election period as an opportunity to reach out to us individually and tell us what your concerns are. Our phone numbers are published, our emails are published. Use this election time, even though there are no competitors, as a time to reach out and express your concerns. And as I've asked all the clusters presidents in my area, please invite me to a meeting in your cluster or put a couple clusters together. Let's get together and have a good conversation about the issues you want to see addressed. And finally, I would urge as many people as possible to show up Tuesday, March the 5th at the county building for the Board of Supervisors public hearing on the PRC ordinance amendment. Please come. Please come in yellow if you have yellow. If you don't have yellow, we're still selling yellow T-shirts, which are going to be collector items very soon. Please come. The hearings start nominally at 4:30. We probably won't be heard until close to 6. So, but please come. So we have tried to fight this battle with the force of truth. We've really tried to analyze the arguments and show where they don't hold, but we've also tried to do it with people force too, people power. And so your attendance on Tuesday will be very important. Thank you.
All right, well, I want to thank all the candidates for stepping up to serve. Again, we got to get the vote out. I also want to recognize Kathy Baum, who is running for the apartment owner seat. She came to listen this evening. I want to thank the Elections Committee as well, and the residents who came out to listen, and those who are watching on TV. So the ballots for the election will be mailed or emailed out on March 4th, next week. And that will be based on the communications preferences, paper or electronic, that were reported back to Resident Association. The ballots are due back by Monday, April 1st at 5 p.m. And again, you can vote either by mail or online. And if you need replacement ballots, I'm going to, for those who are watching or those in the audience, there's a phone number to call. I say it kind of slowly. I'm sure Shalice has it on the website and everything, but it's 610-935-6170. So if you need a replacement ballot, or you send an email to restonelection@intelliscaninc.com. So with that, I'd like to note that we are about 9.5 minutes past our end time. Not too bad for a Reston Association meeting. So I think we should all be happy about that. And thank you to everybody.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you. Thank you for coming.